So, my dear friends, we are at the close of the month of September, a beautiful month. We had some rains, of course, the climate was beautiful, and with greenery, with feasts of Our Lady, we are almost at the close now. And it's the 25th Sunday of the year with a very, very beautiful message. How God can be so generous, so gracious to us. In fact, the theme of today's reading says, the graciousness of God, the kindness, mercy of God, the super generosity, and also a certain leniency when sinners, when those who have done wrong appeal to Him. The first reading itself gives us an inkling of God's generosity or mercy, or perhaps even His being something over, as it were. Prophet Isaiah tells us, God's ways are not our ways. God's plans are not our plans, which means He not only anticipates us, He goes beyond what we are trying to say. We have that beautiful parable wherein the master calls the servants or the laborers for work. Someone he meets at the first hour, perhaps at 9 o'clock in the morning, and he tells him, go and work in my vineyard, in my field, and I will give you 1 denarii. 1 denarii was a big sum of money according to the Jewish calculations, and that would be his salary for the day, wages for the day. And then someone else perhaps comes and meets him around 11 o'clock and he says, surely go and work. And he goes in search. At 2 o'clock he finds somebody else and he says, why are you wasting your time? Go and work and also earn something. And the workers are happy, the laborer is happy. And someone perhaps at the 3 o'clock, just before, a little before the closure time, also meets him and the landlord gives him the work. And at the time of the payment, that's perhaps at 5 o'clock, the landlord starts giving, and he gives the first one, the one who has come last, and he gives him the full denarii. And the one who has come before that, he also gives him the same wages, and the one before that. And so the first one who has come perhaps at 9 o'clock, though he was promised 1 denarii and was given his due, is being given his due, he has got very grumblingly says that the one who has come last, you have given him this much, and you have come first, you have also given me this much. And the master tells him, did I not promise you something which I give you? If perhaps the ones who have come after you have received the same amount, it's my generosity. After all, it's my money. I can do what I want. I can give to what I want. And perhaps that sets a motion of thinking for us. What is God's way of doing things? What is God's way of justice sometimes? What is God's way of giving us perhaps, or allowing us to go a little more? And in spite of our waywardness, God still does not deny us the benefits that He has promised us. It's a beautiful gospel. Gives us a philosophy of our life. We are so calculative. There are some who walk with these calculators to say that this much of time, this much of energy, this much of petrol, this much of wages, my shares, what is put in my bank, what is put on. So we are so calculative, and we just lose sight of life as such. Whereas God teaches us what it means to be generous, what it means to be forgiving, what it means to be accommodating even those who disagree, or perhaps those who are not much in favor with us. So basically, I would say there are 4 lessons we have to learn from these readings. The first lesson is God is generous. God's generosity has to touch us also in some way. We have this beautiful parables of Jesus, the prodigal son. When he comes back, of course the father runs and embraces him. But then he calls all his servants and says, we have to do a big feast. Of course, the one who has come is almost a rogue. He has cheated you. He has finished all his wealth of almost half of his properties, and you are celebrating. But that's God's way. You also remember that parable of the lost coin. The woman has lost a coin. She's a poor lady. Perhaps she has lost one of those 5 or 10 coins that she has dropped somewhere, and she goes and searches everywhere. And when she finds it, so joyful, and she gives a party. She gives a big celebration. Perhaps she spends much more than that one coin that has been found. But that's the way God is. God gives us life. John chapter 10 verse 10 says, God gives us life, and life in abundance. That word abundance is almost overflowing, something spilled out. But still, that's God's way of generosity. Secondly, we also have a sense of God's justice. God doesn't measure according to the scales that we think of. God is much more, perhaps, accommodating. He accepts everybody. That parable that we have had some time back, what's called the seeds and weeds. The sower goes out to sow, and he throws the seeds, as it were. But then when the seeds are growing, his servants come and tell him that there are weeds also there. And how did these weeds come? Surely from some enemy, someone who was jealous, someone who do not have good will about this person, comes and puts the weeds. And the servants are very much agitated. Shall we pull out those weeds and throw them out? Master said, take it cool. Allow the seeds and the weeds to grow at some time. At the time of the reaping, I will ask the servants to do what is to be done. God also tolerates some of the weeds, some of our sinful tendencies. God has more patience. He doesn't want to correct immediately. He doesn't want to destroy or perhaps be so overbearing upon us. That's God's way of justice. Thirdly, I see that God is God's time, as it were. Today's gospel speaks about 9, 11, 2, 3, 5. And we say, what is the best time? What's the best? Of course, the best time is to come in time, to be punctual. But sometimes those who come late, it's not that God encourages unpunctuality. God encourages our coming late for certain things, but then He has a heart for people, those who are late, those who are a little more perhaps slow in their activities and things, and therefore God is never late. You remember that when Lazarus died, Martha and Mary sent for Jesus. And when they send word for Jesus, they expect Him to come immediately because Lazarus was a great friend. But on the other hand, Jesus takes it easy, takes it very cool. And He says, let's go. Well, let us finish our work and go and do what is to be done for Lazarus. And when Jesus comes, Mary and Martha are so much emotional and say that, why did you come so late? Didn't we send you earlier? Didn't we send word to you earlier? And you have come late. Lazarus, our brother, is already dead. But Jesus says, let me go and see him. Let him go and see the place where he is buried. And Jesus wakes him up from his sleep, from his death, as it were, deathly sleep. That's the way. Jesus is never late. Even though he is late, he is still on time. And fourthly, you see that there is hope for everybody. Even the one who has come late, even who has done a blunder. God's way of generosity, that He doesn't discard them. He gives them a chance. He still perhaps says that maybe another chance, a second chance God gives. Now you remember that thief at the side of Jesus, the good thief, we call it the bad thief. What's a good thief? What is the good thing that he has done? He has not done anything good. He deserves to die on the cross because of all his perhaps evil that he has done. But then the good thief appeals to the highest seat of justice, appeals to Jesus himself. Lord, when you are in your kingdom, remember me. Enough one word from him and Jesus forgives him. Perhaps someone may say this is really injustice. Someone who has been struggling and praying and doing fasting and penance all his life, and perhaps he is not considered worthy enough. But a sinner who has been always in sin, done everything else, and always perhaps defaulting, but still finds mercy with his one small appeal, which means there's hope for everybody. Surely things may be late, things may be desperate, things may not be as we are, and many may think that I have no chance, my life is over, I have no chance, I've made a big blunder, I have no chance because everyone is against me. But Jesus still loves us. Yes, especially is generous, and I would say over generous to us. And this is because it's a special mentality. Jesus' own mentality, which St. Paul in the second letter today sends beautifully. For me to live is Christ, he says, and to die is gain. But Christ will be honored in my body in life or death. So this is the response that we have to keep in mind, that ultimately those who surrender themselves to God's will, those who are being in God's will, whether they are early, late, or perhaps even at the last moment, God has still hope for them. And that is why today's gospel, today's readings are very much consoling for us, that though for those who are late, for those who have given up, for those who are despondent, that there is still meaning in appealing to Jesus' mercy and compassion, because he is the most generous of persons. He is the most generous of the divine powers that we can ever appeal.